First up is My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3. And, the first one came out 21 years ago, 22 years ago. I remember at the time liking the movie. I think a lot of people liked the movie is the sense I got. The jokes about the Windex seemed to sort of penetrate this cultural zeitgeist in a pretty impressive way for a pretty small movie. I remember having good warm fuzzies about it. Now, fast forward, 2016, the sequel comes out, My Big Fat Greek Wedding 2. I honestly don't remember seeing it. I don't even know if I saw it. So, it is what it is. And now this brings us to Big Fat Greek Wedding 3. And having had so much time lapse between seeing movies in this franchise, I'm truly guessing it's been 20 years since I've seen, a movie in this series. I had to question my original sort of feelings towards it. I went, was this good at all? Were we all just under some sort of like witch's spell? What are we watching here? All the joy and the humor and the like genuineness and warmth seems to have been sucked out of this film. And I am too afraid to go back and watch the original one because I'm really afraid it'll ruin it. And I want to give them the credit of being like, yeah, there was a good one at one point. But I can only imagine that they made these movies because it's a boondoggle film, right? And I've been talking about these a lot recently, but these sort of set in a beautiful, idyllic location. Usually you get a tax break from the country or whatever it is that you're filming in. It's usually cheaper. And, the places they are filming in Greece are beautiful. Also, the premise of 3 is that they go to Greece. And there's a whole lot of other overcomplicated things. The story could have a few clean plot lines and be fine. There's a whole thing about a family reunion. The entire cast is back, led by Nia Vardalos, who directs this time, which I'm not going to lie, I think may have been part of the problem. John Corbett's back, Joey Fatone is back, Andrea Martin, but everything felt super forced. I will give a shout out to Andrea Martin. She was my favorite part of the film. I think she was also one of the best parts of the original, if I recall correctly. But, it's just a hodgepodge of storylines that feel half-assed, and then they remember that they had them going, and then they want to tie them up quickly. And, we introduce all these new characters who I don't care about. I barely care about the original characters because of the way they've set this up. And so, I feel like it does this discredit to the franchise to keep trying to squeeze and wring stories out of it when you are sullying this sort of original portrayal of a family that felt authentic at the time, and now it is just spun out into whatever the hell it is. I could go on about the plot points that just make absolutely no sense. But I think the thing that really came across is, one, it sort of feels like a commercial for parts of Greece. But by the same token, they're not displaying parts of it in their best light because, this is like a rundown village is happening and all this stuff. And then, they're forcing in all these new weird characters that, like I said, you could have just focused on the family, and that's at least like a fast track to being like, oh yeah, I at least understand universally the concept of family and family dynamics. And, that is the thing that drove the first one, right? This is tight-knit family, and then an outsider comes in, gets in a romantic relationship with one of them, John Corbett's character and Nia Vardalos' character. But, this one it's got too many plates spinning, and they're not even interesting plates. And it is an hour-and-a-half movie, and it was dragging for me. Like, there's always this rubbery sense of time in a movie like this where you're like, I know factually that the time is continuing to progress forward, but they are just cramming so much and so much bloat into this that somehow each minute feels like 10 extra minutes, and I'm stuck here watching it, and I can't leave. So, even if you were a fan of the first one, okay, I'll say this. I haven't seen the second one, but based on the sort of reviews of it, I don't think it's particularly great. So if you were a fan of the first one and you feel the yearning and you're like, oh, there's a third one out, go back and watch the first one again. Don't drag yourself down into this mess. If you had no interest at all and you've never even seen the first one, this is absolutely not for you, but I caution you away from this film. It's such a bummer because I do remember having like a great amount of respect for the first one, doing what it did on, such a small budget and portraying this sort of, it's unfair to call her an atypical romantic lead because I actually think she's very pretty, but it's at the time not fitting the Hollywood beauty standards, but now it just feels like a bad cash grab / vacation plan. So I'm going to give this a 1.6 out of 5. The other thing I have this week is a new series out on Apple TV Plus called The Changeling, and I will acknowledge I knew nothing going into this show. I just knew that Lakeith Stanfield was in it, and it was called The Changeling, and then I figured out it was based on a book because the description of the show said that, and that's about it. Now, I feel like maybe it would have behooved me to do a tiny bit more research going into it because I felt confused is not the right word, but sort of thrown about by a lot of the tonal shifts. And I think even if you have read the book, when it comes to the show as an adaptation, you will still probably struggle with some of the tonal shifts, because I get the sense, having looked back now, that the book is a little darker. The other thing I did know going into it, and not realizing that this was what it was going to be about, is about, the sort of myth of changelings and kids getting replaced by, stolen by fairies and Brothers Grimm type stuff. And so that is what it is more about. Now, I don't want to go too much into details, because my takeaway from the show is a lot of it was about the sort of like, is this real? Is this not? I can't swear that the show was intending for that to be the audience's takeaway, but because of all these sort of swings back and forth, that is what happened to me as an audience member who has not read the book. Now, again, if you have, this is going to be a very different experience for you. Now, the things I will say about it is the performances were very impressive. I think that is why I kept watching it, because it's also this sort of dark, a little bit horrific type show, which is not my usual cup of tea, but I was sort of entranced by these characters and what was going on. And then finally, when the mystery sort of drops, the first 3 episodes are out right now, but when the mystery sort of drops, I was like, oh, I think there's supposed to be more to this, but I was happy to just watch these, characters exist in their world for a bit. Lakeith Stanfield, like I said, plays a character called Apollo, and I said this, I can't believe I'm comparing these two things, but I remember saying this about Haunted Mansion a few weeks ago. He is such a good actor, and he can elevate a project from something that is terrible. Haunted Mansion, I felt, was not very good, but he was just putting in the work, and it was in a different, film than everyone else. At least he is also matched by other actors who are giving these great performances. Clark Bacco, Adina Porter, Jared Abramson, Alexis Louder, Malcolm Barrett, and Jane Kasmerick, who it took me so long to realize who the hell, she just looks so different now than she did in Malcolm in the Middle, I think. But, she looks great, but I just did not recognize her. So the characters, I think, are really what drives this. The story and the plot itself, if you're willing to overlook that and you like ooky spooky kind of fantasy thriller horror, and I say this as someone who is very scared of horror things, so I was not scared by the show, which is good because I don't enjoy being scared by things. So if you want this, so it's like a sort of a mood setting show, and then good character pieces. But if you're looking for hardcore logical plot, I would warn you away from The Changeling. I had to decide, do I want to recommend this show to my parents? Because I usually use that as a litmus test for maybe broader audiences. And at the end of the day, I said, no, because they're going to ask me questions about so wait, what was this supposed to be in? I don't understand why this is happening. And so if you're okay with the sort of gray in between, maybe ethereal world, The Changeling might be worth checking out. If you are not really a fan of that, this is not going to be for you, but The Changeling has begun streaming now on Apple TV+.